This is Rogers TV Ottawa.
Councillor Harder. Councillor Suds.
Here.
Councillor Oshantiri.
Present.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Here.
Councillor Shirelli. Councillor Eglai.
Here.
Councillor Deans.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Présent.
Conseil Fleury.
Bonjour.
Councillor King.
Here.
Councillor McKenney.
Present.
Councillor Leeper.
Good morning.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Menard.
Present.
Conseil Cloutier. I believe I saw Councillor Cloutier. Councillor Kitts.
Yes.
Here.
Councillor DeRuse.
Here.
Councillor Moffat.
Here.
Councillor Meehan.
I'm here.
Councillor Hubley.
Here.
Mayor Watson.
You see?
You have a quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Thank you very much. And good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. The pandemic is certainly not over, but we continue to make great progress in Ottawa in terms of high vaccination rates, low hospitalization rates, and other key public health indicators. Today is another important milestone in our ongoing fight against COVID-19 as we move closer to community immunity. Nous avons franchi une autre étape importante dans notre lutte contre le COVID-19.
We went through another very important milestone. We are close to community immunity.
Services. In consultation with public health officials, I've advised the province that the municipal state of emergency will end as of 12:01 a.m. tomorrow, Thursday, July 22nd, 2021. Our vaccination and testing efforts continue, but the city's Emergency Operations Center will transition to activated operations. The municipal state of emergency that I declared on March 25th, 2020, provided the conditions for the city to be nimble in the procurement and organization of resources, including our staff. Over the past 16 months, our operations have been continually refined in many areas as we addressed the evolving challenges of procuring supplies and resources to keep residents safe. I've been assured that de-escalating into activated operations will neither impact day-to-day operations, nor will it impede our ability to respond to future provincial direction on the pandemic. The province entered step 3 of its economic reopening plan on July 16th, 2021, and this, of course, was tremendous news, especially for our local small businesses, which are now permitted to reopen or operate at increased capacity. We are continuing to make strong progress in our vaccine campaign. As of today, 83% of Ottawa residents 18 and older have received 1 dose, and 67% have been fully vaccinated. That is truly remarkable. To date, we have administered over 1.3 million doses through our community clinics, pharmacies, pop-up clinics, and primary care providers. And just last week, it was reported that Ottawa is leading the province for vaccine coverage among youth aged 12 to 17, and we're also leading large municipalities for vaccine coverage amongst adults. It's never been easier to get your first or second dose. You don't even need an appointment at our community clinics. You can just drop in. Il n'a jamais été aussi facile d'obtenir votre première.
It's never been so easy to get your first or second dose.
Will have an impact on our 2-dose summer and hopefully the return to a more normal situation in the fall. Now, with so many residents having received vaccines, we're consolidating the number of community clinics to meet demand. 5 community vaccine clinics across the city with the resources and scale for mass vaccination will continue to operate as of today. By consolidating the number of community clinics, it enables our staff to refocus their efforts on more targeted vaccine delivery channels that will be prioritized to reach the remainder of the population who may face barriers accessing the vaccine. While our vaccine numbers continue to rise, COVID-19 is still in our community, and we can't let our guard down. Ce virus se propage très rapidement et nous
It
devons...
is expanding quite quickly, and we must remain vigilant.
Masking requirements through provincial regulations remain in place and can be extended based on the status of the pandemic, and this is from the province of Ontario. Since we began the process of reopening, I've had a chance to visit a number of small businesses and restaurants, and I want to take this opportunity to thank local residents and visitors to our city for supporting local businesses and for doing your part by getting vaccinated and continuing to follow public health guidelines. There's no doubt that there is a renewed sense of energy in this city as we begin to see a return to normalcy. Il n'y a aucun doute qu'on peut encore une fois sentir
So we can still again feel the energy in the city while we are starting to going back to normal.
Each business I have visited made the health and safety of their employees and customers the number one priority, and I'm grateful for that. Well, we still have a ways to go before we can declare the pandemic over. Today marks an important step in our path forward towards the end of it. In conclusion, I'd like to take this opportunity to once again thank the tremendous work of Dr. Etches and Anthony DeMonte and their respective teams who have made this city so proud, including all of our healthcare workers, frontline workers, personal support workers, and hospitals, and of course our paramedics. I'd also like to thank Councillor Keith Egline for his leadership and advice as chair of the Ottawa Board of Health. As I said before, we're not quite out of this, but it's important to acknowledge the incredible progress we've made to date. I encourage everyone to stay safe and active and continue to follow public health guidelines as we move to the next step in our recovery. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Confirmation of minutes, adoption de procès-verbaux pour le 7 juillet. Carried?
Carried.
Declaration of interest, including those originally rising from prior meetings. Déclaration de conflit d'intérêt. None. Communications as presented. Petitions as presented. Regrets, no regrets filed to date. Motion to introduce reports. Motion portant présentation de rapport. Councillor Brockington, please. Seconded by Conseiller Fleury.
Good morning, Mayor. That the Finance and Economic Committee Report 27A, Planning Committee Report 46, Transportation Committee Report 20A, and the reports from the City Clerk entitled Results of Circulation for Expressions of Interest, Planning Committee and Ottawa Community Lands Development Corporation, and Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for items subject to the Planning Act, explanation requirements, and the City Council meeting of July 7th, 2021 be received and considered.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brockington. On the motion by Councillor Brockington. Carried. We'll go through the consent agenda and then the governance items and then back to the regular agenda. So the first, we'll just go through consent. Item 1, committee reports, rapport des comités, FEDCO. We have a motion, so we'll come back to that.
Mr. Mayor, there was something I wanted to pull from FEDCO. It's Councillor Kavanaugh.
Yeah, I think that comes up near the end of the meeting, Councillor. I've been notified about it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Item 2, independent reports on LRT Stage 2 lessons learned.
Hold,
Carried.
please.
Sorry,
Hold.
who was that?
Councilor Bernard.
Okay, we'll hold that. Next, Lansdowne Park Partnership Path to Sustainability and Next Steps.
Hold it, Mayor, I have a question.
Sorry, Councillor Fleury.
I have a
Want
question.
it held?
Yes, please.
Is it a long question or do you want to do it now?
It's really up to you. It's a question about the next steps, basically.
Why don't we come back then?
We should hold the item.
All right. Next, item 4, Integrated Orleans Community Improvement Plan. Carried.
Hold that. Mayor, can you hold that as well? Or I have a couple questions on it quickly, if you want me to do it quickly.
If it's a couple, we'll come back.
Okay.
Item 5, OSU Fieldhouse, George Nelms Sports Park on Mitch Owens Road. All right, thank you, Councillor DeRuz, for your work on that project. It's a very well-used facility, I know, in your ward. Planning Committee Report number 46, rapport numéro 46 du Comité de l'Urbanisme Zoning Bylaw Amendment 30 to 48 Chamberlain Avenue.
Please hold that.
Official Plan Amendment and Zoning Bylaw Amendment 1335 and 1339 Bank Street.
Yeah, quick question on that one too, Mayor.
All right, we'll hold it. Official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment 403 Richmond Road and 389 Roosevelt Avenue.
Carried.
Carried. Item 9, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment 19 Center Point Drive.
Carried.
Carried. Next is city clerk, results of circulation expression of interest planning committee. We'll bring that back as our next item. Bulk consent agenda. Does anyone wish to remove anything from the bulk consent agenda?
Just wish to register dissent on one item, Mayor.
On which one?
On the brownfield item.
Okay, clerk has that. On the bulk consent agenda as presented.
Carried.
Carried. Okay, so we have a number of items. The first item we'll deal with is on governance. Results of circulation for expression of interest planning committee and Ottawa Community Lands Development Corporation. We have a motion, I believe, by Councillor Hubley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would you like me to read the whole motion or just therefore be it resolved?
I think the whole motion, just so everyone has it and we can put it up on the screen as well.
Okay, will do. Whereas the planning committee is responsible for overseeing all development and planning matters within the urban boundary in accordance with the city's official plan document, including zoning designations, community planning, site design requirements, and affordable housing. And whereas in recognition of the traditional heavy workload associated with this mandate, the planning committee meets twice monthly. And whereas as approved by council as part of the 2014-2018 midterm governance review, the planning committee chair receives funding for an additional administrative support over and above that received by other chairs, i.e. being 1 FTE, to assist with additional work associated with this role. Whereas in addition to their role established under the procedures bylaw to preside over twice monthly meetings, as well as special meetings and joint meetings, the chair of planning committee currently has a role advising staff on policy development through a dedicated seat on the Council of Sponsor Groups for the official plan review and the community benefits charge bylaw, as well as the transportation master plan. And whereas, in addition to presiding over these meetings in the absence of the chair, the planning committee vice chair sits on the council sponsors group for the new zoning bylaw project. Whereas it is anticipated that the planning committee will continue to have an extraordinary high workload for the remainder of the term of council, resulting from the consideration and approval of the new official plan currently under development and the work plan for development of a new comprehensive zoning bylaw, in addition to a variety of related policy initiatives and a continued high volume of site-specific planning applications. And whereas appointing 2 co-chairs of planning committee instead of a chair and a vice chair would allow for more sustainable and equitable distribution of the workload and support for the remainder of the term of council. Therefore, be it resolved that the terms of reference for the planning committee be amended to provide for the planning committee to have 2 co-chairs to be selected by council from within the committee's existing membership for the remainder of the 2018 to 2022 term of council. And be it further resolved that in lieu of having a formal vice chair, that the 2 planning committee co-chairs may jointly determine who will chair a given meeting, with the other acting in the capacity of vice chair in accordance with subsection 83(1) of the procedures bylaw. And finally, be it further resolved that the additional funding provided to the planning committee chair from the council administrative services budget be split equally between the 2 co-chairs, with each receiving the equivalent of 1/2 of an FTE position. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And that's seconded by Councillor Dudas. Any comments? Councillor Menard.
Thanks. I just have some questions about how this would work if we passed this motion and we were then deciding on the co-chairs. Would each member of council receive 1 vote for their desired co-chair?
Sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, so it's a question, I guess, to the clerk. If we pass the motion, would each member of council have one vote for their desired co-chair? And then the top two of that one vote would then receive those co-chair positions.
Mr. Mayor, I'll ask the clerk to expand on this if required. But if Councillor Hubeley's motion to establish two co-chairs were to pass, members of council would then have two votes for co-chairs. So they would, when called upon to vote, would say the names of two members that they would like to be the co-chairs.
Okay, and I mean, I'd like to suggest that we each be afforded one vote for our desired co-chair, and the top two receive those positions in a more democratic process. That would, I think, yield better results. And would just like to question the clerk's office on have we had co-chairs before, and is that how the voting has worked in the past?
Mr. Mayor, to answer the councillor's first question, we have not had co-chairs in the past. With regard to the voting procedure, where we have had multiple members of council putting forward their names for a committee that has two spots, we have indeed proceeded to allow each member of council to have votes equivalent to the number of spaces on that committee. So the voting procedure would be consistent with that past practice.
So that's the precedent we'll follow. Anything else, Councillor?
Yeah, I just one more question. There are some within planning committee. We meet, you meet twice a month. There are some more policy-oriented issues, and there are some more application-based issues. Is it the desire of that motion, or I guess the mover, that somebody would chair more policy-oriented discussions and somebody would chair more application-based discussions?
That's correct.
I just want to get clarity on why.
Yeah, that's correct. You're correct. Councillor Buckington.
Thanks, Mayor. I find it interesting that Councillor Harder was so engaged in the position. We now need two people to take on the work, how busy this committee is. My question for staff is around procedure. Does staff acknowledge that it is better to have two co-chairs that would be recognized by staff to do certain work, lead certain projects, than keep a chair and vice chair who can equally disseminate work and decide who's doing what? Is it just easier to have two equal co-chairs from a procedural point of view?
Well, that's really
I'll take the crack.
Mr. O'Connor, I think that really is a decision by the elected officials. You can offer a comment if you like.
Well, what I'm trying to get at, Mayor, is I don't know if a vice chair of the committee can lead certain subcommittees or working groups. I don't know if we have language that says it's the chair of planning committee that does that function, and whether if we create two equal co-chairs, it addresses that matter. And from a procedural point of view, it would be easier to do it that way. That's why I'm asking the clerk for a comment.
Mr. O'Connor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I do believe that there is some benefits to going this approach. One of them in particular is the fact that you would be, the two co-chairs would be sharing the half-time FTE. So if they're sharing an equal amount of work, dividing up the policy and the application proportions for the development and planning law matters, then that would be of some assistance to have two co-chairs as opposed to just one.
Okay, fair enough. There's little difference here. If you have a well-functioning chair and vice chair, you should be able to divvy up the work in that regard. But if there are benefits to having two co-chairs, then I'll support the motion. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think that it would have been different if we'd known ahead of time. Having this at the last minute makes it a little different. Has any consideration been given to asking female members of the planning committee to co-chair so that you have gender equity?
Well, I think any member of council could put forward their names. We can't force members of council. I believe you were approached to sit on planning committee and you turned that down. So we can't force members of council to put their names forward. These are the names that are before us.
Okay, but this has just been found out now, so it's quite different in terms of the membership that's there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor El-Shantiri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I hope my colleague will support this approach because we all know, and I think Councillor Brockington said it nicely, the workload Councillor Harder was doing in the past. And I'd like to acknowledge that as well. But being a co-chair for the OP, there's a lot of work ahead of us, and whether from OP policy and public hearings and other, and then you have the planning committee day-to-day workload. So having two co-chair, I believe, is a great opportunity for all of us to learn from it and move forward with that. Also, I disagree with my colleague previously saying we know for quite some times now the clerk has somebody who's interested in chairing that, and we have 3 names on the list today. So if somebody was thinking about it, they could have put their name forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McKenney, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I do want to reiterate what Councillor Kavanagh said. We didn't know the rules walking into today. I might point out that after today, if 2 of the 3 people who put their names forward, and granted I was not one of them, is elected chair, every single chair of a standing committee of the City of Ottawa Council will be male, and every vice chair but 1 will also be a man. So we are not an equitable council in terms of who we have at the table, and hence mostly at FEDCO in terms of gender representation. I would like to ask staff, the clerk, if in fact they feel that the process that we have in front of us today, and it is new. It's not, we didn't know coming into today's meeting that we would be voting for 2 vice chairs. And what happens if the current chair of the Environment Committee is elected as vice chair? What happens to that chair position on Environment Committee?
Mr. Mayor, at this point in time, what we would do is we would take the summer break to look at what the implications or ramifications are of any particular vote, because any of the votes could go any number of ways.
So is it a possibility that we would have a co-chair of planning as the same person as the chair of Environment Committee? Is that a possibility?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I find that concerning as well. I think that, again, it's something that we should know in advance of a vote. Last question. When we choose a name, if we only have 1 person that we'd like to vote for, is that possible?
Clerk.
If a member decides to abstain from voting, it is a negative vote in accordance with the Municipal Act. If you only vote for 1 name, I assume that there's no negative vote there because you're not technically voting for a second person. So while I would think it, practically speaking, it would be difficult, yes, a member could only vote for 1 member as opposed to 2 co-chairs.
Okay, thank you. No other questions.
Thank you. Councillor Leeper, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Mayor, I do think I have some significant sympathy for the point of view that was expressed by Councillor Kavanagh with respect to the process today. It is falling in our laps, and a co-chair position is a different position from being fully the chair. The report from the clerk with respect to this matter does note that nominations from the floor may be accepted by way of motion, regularly moved and seconded, etc. So I do feel that it is important that we have more women in our chair roles, and I would encourage Councillor Kavanagh or any of the other women on City Council to put their names forward or to let somebody know that they would like their names put forward so that we can move that nomination by way of motion before before a vote is taken.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dudas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you everyone for this conversation. In regards to the motion that's before us, I do support this. Having seen the tremendous amount of work that our Chair Harder, who's chair and a female, I'll just point out as a female running planning committee for many, many years, was very successful at juggling. It is a phenomenal amount of workload. And I think that, having two capable individuals filling this role is necessary to move us through the OP. We have a lot of work ahead of us in September as we go through the delegations, and I'm sure that we'll have many days worth of work, plus all of the workload that comes with this. Having sat on planning committee now throughout the term, I'm very familiar with the workload as a committee member. As a female on the committee, I very much admired the work that was done by the former chair. And I'm going to say that, if I had wanted that role, I would have certainly put it up. It wouldn't have mattered if I was co-chair or chair. If I had wanted it, I would have put my name for it. At this point, I don't think it's something that makes sense for me, and I will not speak for my other female colleagues, but I would suspect that it wouldn't matter if there was two roles or one role. We're all strong women, and I'm sure we would have put our hands up if we had so wanted. So I'm just going to put that out there. That's my strong feelings on that. And I think that I very much support this motion. And I think that the two best people for the job should be in the role.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Deans, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to address my first question to Councillor Moffat. Just wanted to ask Councillor Moffat, if he were to be successful to be a co-chair of Planning Committee today, would it be his intention to continue in the role of chair of the Environment Committee?
Would you like me to answer that?
Yes, please.
Chair? I'll just do the chair, though. I think over the course of the last 2.5 years, we've advanced a lot of important files on Environment Committee. We have an incredibly strong committee. I would suspect we've probably had some of the most progress we've ever had on a committee with an environmental nature. Working alongside Vice Chair Menard and with a probably one of the best balances of representation on the committee of any committee that we have. I would absolutely want to continue that work of that committee over the course of the next year and a half, because with that role, I've also sat on the Climate Change Sponsors Group as chair and chair of the Solid Waste Master Plan Working Group as well in that process. Working very closely, of course, with Vice Chair Menard. And I think it's important that we have continuity on that file. The Solid Waste Master Plan is an incredibly significant file, just like the official plan is. And to have continuity on those files is incredibly important for the future of the city. And I don't think changing chairs, it's not my ideal option to sit here today and have a discussion about replacing the chair of the planning committee. I don't think it's ideal to switch chairs of committees in the middle of important planning files. But here we are. So as such, I wouldn't be willing to step down as chair of Environment Committee, because I think we have a lot of work to do. Of course, that all pertains to if council is even willing to accept me as a co-chair. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that council is going to make that decision. There's 3 people and there's 24 of us to make that decision.
Okay, thank you for that. And maybe the city clerk could just remind me of how many members of FEDCO there currently are, and what the maximum number of members of FEDCO there can be.
Mr. Mayor, I'll defer to the deputy clerk, who probably has those figures readily at hand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. FEDCO currently has, if I'm recalling correctly, 12 members, which are the chairs of the standing committees, and 1 member at large elected by council. It is a committee with a defined composition defined through the term of council governance review.
And the defined composition is 12 maximum?
The defined composition is the chairs of the standing committees and 1 member at large. And the deputy mayors, my apologies.
Okay, so if someone were to be elected a co-chair of planning committee today that is not currently a member of FEDCO, then that would increase the number to 13 or 14?
Mr. Mayor, at this point, that it does not I do not believe that would be a possible outcome from the current candidates that are before council for consideration.
Can you further explain that? I don't believe Councillor Menard, for example, is on FEDCO. So if he were successful, would he be joining FEDCO as the 13th member?
At this time, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Menard has put forward his name as a member of the planning committee. So if council approved that, he would be a member of the planning committee. He would not be a member of FEDCO.
Can you just remind me of the 3 members that are seeking the position today?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The 3 members that have put forward their name for consideration by council for chair of planning committee are Councillors Gower, Leeper, and Moffat.
Oh, right. Okay, so I'm sorry. If Councillor Leeper is not currently a member of FEDCO, so if he were to be the successful candidate today, would he be joining FEDCO?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. And there's no issue with having a quorum of council as on a standing committee?
Mr. Mayor, perhaps I should clarify my last answer. There is currently only 11 members of FEDCO because Councillor Harder is no longer a member of FEDCO. So if Councillor Leeper were to be a chair of planning committee, he would join FEDCO and there would be no increase to the overall complement of members of FEDCO.
Okay, anything else, Councillor?
Is Councillor Gower a member of FEDCO?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Gower is currently the at-large member appointed by council on FEDCO.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Okay, so on the Hubley-Dudas motion, carried.
Yeas and nays.
Yeas and nays.
The nays, been called by Councillor Leeper.
Councillor Tierney.
Yes.
Councillor El Shantiri.
Yes.
Councillor Luloff. Councillor Luloff.
Yes.
Councillor Menard.
No.
Councillor Gower.
Yes.
Councillor King.
No.
Councillor Dudas.
Yes.
Conseil Cloutier.
Oui.
Councillor DeRuse.
Yes.
Councillor McKenney.
No.
Councillor Suds.
Yes.
Councillor Moffat.
Yes.
Councillor Shirelli.
No.
Councillor Brockington.
Yes.
Councillor Eglai.
No.
Councillor Deans.
No.
Councillor Leeper.
No.
Councillor Kitts.
Yes.
Councillor Meehan.
No.
Councillor Hubley.
Yes.
Conseiller Fleury.
No.
Councillor Harder.
Yes.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
No.
Mayor Watson.
Yes.
14 yeas, 10 nays.
Okay, next is Councillor Hubley has a motion seconded by Councillor Dudas with respect to the names of individuals wanting to serve on planning. So Councillor Hubley, if you can introduce the motion, we can put it up on screen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion is shorter. It says, whereas the city clerk has undertaken a circulation to seek expressions of interest from members of council interested in seeking appointment as the chair of the planning committee, and whereas the clerk's office has received 3 expressions of interest for chair of planning committee from councilors Gower, Leeper, and Moffat, and whereas council has approved the establishment of co-chairs of the planning committee for the remainder of the 2018-2022 term of council, therefore be it resolved that council approve the appointment of 2 of the following members of council as co-chairs of the planning committee. One is Councillor Glenn Gower, 2, Councillor Jeff Leeper, and number 3 would be Councillor Scott Moffat. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And Mr. Clerk, just to confirm your advice in the past, there's no campaigning, so to speak, on this. We just go right to the vote.
Has always been my recommendation, yes, Mr. Mayor, and the past practice.
Okay. So our first item is nominations for a member of Planning Committee. We have 1 name that's been put forward, Councillor Menard. Carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Dissent.
Dissent, okay. Next is nominations for Chair of Planning Committee. So you, the clerk will go through each individual member of council, and you're to bring forward 2 names for the 2 co-chair positions. Madam Deputy Clerk.
Councillor Tierney.
Councillor Moffat, Councillor Gower.
Councillor El Shantiri.
Councillor Gower, Councillor Moffat.
Councillor Luloff.
Gower, Moffat.
Councillor Menard.
Councillor Leeper.
Councillor Gower.
Councillor Moffat and myself, Councillor Gower.
Councillor King.
Councillor Leeper.
Councillor Dudas.
Councillors Gower and Moffat.
Conseiller Cloutier.
Les conseillers Gower et Moffat.
Councillor DeRose.
Councillor Moffat, Councillor Gower.
Councillor McKenney.
Councillor Leeper.
Councillor Sudds.
Councillors Gower and Moffat.
Councillor Moffat.
Councillor Gower and Councillor Moffat.
Councillor Shirelli.
Councillor Moffat.
Councillor Brockington.
Councillor Leeper.
Councillor Eglai.
Councillor Gower.
Councillor Deans.
Councillor Leeper.
Councillor Leeper.
Councillor Leeper.
Councillor Kitts.
Councillor Gower, Councillor Moffat.
Councillor Meehan.
Councillor Leeper.
Councillor Hubley.
Councillors Gower and Moffat, please.
Conseiller Fleury.
Conseiller Jeffrey Leeper.
Councillor Harder.
Moffat, Gower.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Councillor Leeper.
Mayor Watson.
Councillor Gower and Moffat.
We have Councillor Gower, 14, Councillor Moffat, 14, Councillor Leeper, 9.
Okay, congratulations. Next is nominations for members of the Board of Directors, Ottawa Community Lands Development Corporation. We have 2 names with 1 position. So we'll go to a recorded vote. You choose the individual that you'd like to serve on that organization.
Apologies, Mr. Mayor.
Is the motion on the screen?
Mr. Mayor, the two candidates for member of the Board of Directors of Ottawa Community Lands Development Corporation are Councillors Brockington and Hubley. So members voting should state the name of their preferred candidate. Councillor Tierney.
Councillor Hubley.
Councillor El Shantiri.
Councillor Hubley.
Councillor Luloff.
Councillor Brockington.
Councillor Menard.
Councillor Brockington.
Councillor Gower.
Councillor Hubley.
Councillor King.
Councillor Brockington.
Councillor Dudas.
Councillor Brockington.
Conseil Cloutier.
Councillor Hubley.
Councillor DeRose.
Councillor Hubley.
Councillor McKenney.
Councillor Brockington.
Councillor Sudds.
Councillor Hubley.
Councillor Moffat.
Councillor Hubley.
Councillor Shirelli.
Councillor Brockington.
Councillor Brockington.
Councillor Brockington.
Councillor Eglai.
Councillor Brockington.
Councillor Deans.
Councillor Brockington.
Councillor Leeper.
Councillor Brockington.
Councillor Kitts.
Councillor Hubley.
Councillor Meehan.
Councillor Brockington.
Councillor Hubley.
Councillor Hubley.
You're on mute, buddy.
Sorry, Ms.
I believe Councillor Hubley said Councillor Hubley.
You're on mute, Councillor.
Yes, sorry, it keeps flipping back and forth on me. Yes, I voted for myself.
Conseil Fleury.
Councillor Brockington.
Councillor Harder.
Hubley.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Councillor Brockington.
Mayor Watson.
Councillor Hubley.
We have 13 for Councillor Brockington, 11 for Councillor Hubley.
Great, congratulations. Next item, we go back to our consent agenda now, items that have been held. We have the proposed budget directions for 2022, timeline and consultation process. Councillor Menard, you have a motion, I believe. Is it two motions I have here on the item?
No, there's one motion.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Can
introduce it.
Just get it up on the screen here so everyone can read it as well. Whereas the City of Ottawa continues to adapt to the impacts of a global pandemic that has resulted in a significant strain on the capacity of Ottawa Public Health and other public services, and whereas the public has expressed a clear desire to see changes in the way policing is conducted, and whereas the City of Toronto has recently invested in a non-police crisis response team pilot project, and whereas Ottawa Public Health is well positioned to review, investigate, and pursue this in Ottawa, should it have the resources to do so, and whereas studies have shown that increased investments in public health provide a broad return on investment, including savings to healthcare, social and justice systems. For example, every dollar invested in mental health and addiction saves $30 in lost productivity and social costs, and every dollar invested in every childhood development saves $9 in future spending on health, social, and justice services. Whereas on May 21st, 2021, Ottawa Public Health released a statement that the Ottawa Paramedic Service, the Ottawa Police Service, and their partners have continued to see an increase in overdose activity over the past year, with this activity largely linked to an increasingly toxic drug supply. And whereas post-pandemic, there is even greater need for public health programming and policy work than there was pre-pandemic. And whereas the 2021 base budget for Ottawa Police Services is $304.66 million, and increases projected through the report would see the police budget increase by as much as $13.5 million, whereas the municipal portion of Ottawa Public Health's 2021 base budget is $24.8 million, and increases projected through the report would see the public health budget increase by as much as $985,000 only. And whereas the Ottawa police budget has been one of the fastest growing line items in the city, outpacing inflation, population growth, and municipal tax increases since 2001. And whereas City Council should not be financially prioritizing policing over public health, therefore be it resolved that the recommendation 2A2 of the report titled Proposed 2022 Budget Directions, Timelines, and Consultation Process be amended as follows. 2A2, that Ottawa Police levy be increased by no more than 0%, and that Council requests that the Police Services Board develop their draft budget based on this. And be it further resolved that the corresponding savings, estimated to be 9.27 million, be directed to Ottawa Public Health above the 2.6% cap referenced in recommendation 2A1. Mayor, I'll just comment on that last point. The 9.27 million still leaves an increase through traditional MPAC valuation increases in housing. And so you'll see inflationary increases greater than inflationary increases still going to the Ottawa Police Service through that taxation differential to account for things such as staffing and other needs that may come up. Where we are saying is that it is necessary to make a change in Ottawa. And of course, the chair of the OPSB and the chief both have expressed a desire to look into freezing the budget, if not reduce it in some cases. And I think we need to take a principled stance on this and offer something less than the usual above inflation increase, and stick with the usual increase here as a political choice, and one that I think reflects poorly given the exercises that are already going on with the police board. The police can come back with whichever budget they draft, and we can either approve or reject it then. And for our part, it's time to stop setting the expectation for an automatic 3% increase every year, which is a large increase because of how big the police budget is. And as the Democratic representatives of citizens of Ottawa, we ought to send a message that this budget has grown enough. Indeed, it's tripled over the last 20 years. And that's after, some people question me on that, that's after amalgamation. While we've seen other crucial services stagnated or have otherwise been underfunded or defunded, despite evidence that further investment would save money and improve health outcomes, that's something that investing in the police does not do. So I'll have comments on wrap up as well, Mayor, but interested in seeing the debate. Thanks.
So just, Councillor Deans, are you supportive of this motion? As the chair of the Police Services Board, it'd be good to have your opinion before we go to the other speakers.
No, Mr. Mayor, I think I would suggest that we refer this to the budget. I can tell you that the Police Services Board understands the current climate and have made a promise to the public that we would make our best efforts to reduce the budget ask in 2020 to hold it to 2021 levels, or at least part of the way there. And we have formed a working committee that's working on that. We've hired a consultant to assist us in that work. We have a provincial responsibility to provide effective policing in the city of Ottawa. And we understand our mandate, and we understand that there is a lot of work to do. It is not an easy task. We have been told, I don't have the stats right off the top of my head, but we've been told that a 0% increase, because 81% of our budget is staffing costs, would result in layoffs of about 100 police service members. And of course, the last people that we've hired are the most diverse group we've ever hired. So they're the racialized minorities, they're the women, they're the ones that would be leaving. So we're trying to, recognize all of the goals that we as a board have to provide effective and efficient policing in the city of Ottawa as cost effectively as possible. We're working on a mental health strategy, and that's taking time, but hopefully that too will yield savings. But To start out the budget process at zero is difficult. I mean, we have committed to doing the work. It is the board that will ultimately make the final decision, but there's a lot of work to do. We haven't built our budget yet. So I would say at the very least, if you were to take this motion today and refer it to the budget process, we understand the point of it. We have a lot of work to be done and the budget hasn't been built yet. So I couldn't commit today that we could make that happen.
Right, thank you. Councillor El-Shantiri.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I don't like to repeat what my colleague just said, but I'm in total agreement with the chair of the OPS. And I do have a referral motion. So moved by myself, seconded by Councillor DeRose. Be it resolved that Menard McKenney motion regarding the police service budget be referred for council consideration during 2022 draft budget review process after the Ottawa Police Service has tabled its draft budget, and that the city treasurer be directed to include an update on this matter and potential funding available as part of the tabling of 2022 draft budget with council on November 3rd, 2021. Mr. Mayor, I don't want to speak much about this because my colleague, I think, she covered most of the bases, but one more thing we need to do. Also, we have a community safety plan, and it should be also funded, and we'll wait for the police board budget to be approved. And if there's any extra funding, maybe that we can fund the community safety plan, and that goes hand in hand with what my colleague Menard wants to see alternative dealing with mental health on the street in the city of Ottawa. So with that, Mr. Mayor, that's my referral motion.
Okay, so we're now going to debate referral only. On referral, Councillor McKenney.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, so on referral, I won't support referral. I think it's important that that we send direction to Police Services Board that as a council, our priorities are housing, their public health, they are, social supports, mental health supports. It's the Police Services Board can come back to us with any number, regardless of our budget direction. We know that. They could come back to us, even if the as is were to pass, they could come back with 4%. So even if we send a budget direction of zero, not including the, as Councillor Menard pointed out, this still allocates the assessment portion to Police Services Board. What it does is it signals as a council that we've heard from residents. We know, especially, yeah, I'm on referral. Yeah.
Referral, please.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Oh, slant back over. But it means that as a council, we are taking a stand. We are saying that we would like to see Police Services Board come back with a 0% increase, and to establish as a council what our priorities are to meet the needs of people in our community. And a mental health strategy and community safety plan are our responsibility as a council. They're not the police's responsibility. Nobody's asking for police for a mental health strategy. Nobody's asking police for community safety plan. They're asking us. We are council, and that should be completely community led. And this would also signal that it would be, that our safety plans and our community plans and our mental health strategies would be led by the community. So as in regards to referral, if we refer this, we are simply saying no. We're going to go ahead and direct you to come back with 3%. And in today's climate, that would be unfair to the people that we represent who need our help today. Thank you.
Thank you. On referral, Councillor Shirelli.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not going to support the referral. Less than a week ago in my ward, we held a public meeting, virtual by Zoom, on crime reduction, guns and gangs, and those issues. This is after we had recently a shooting and a stabbing in our ward. And people were very clear that there is no support in our area for defunding the police. So that's something that I don't want to give the impression that we're headed toward. And secondly, it's not, yeah, but secondly, by referring, we continue the myth that politicians are going to be deciding how policing is done in Ottawa. And it's not supposed to be that way. Policing is supposed to be a decision made by the chief who designs the policing and enforcement plan for the city and gives it to Police Services Board along with basically the bill. It's not supposed to go to council to decide whether there should be a global limit at the start of all this and whether there should be some sort of urging to do this or that to get there. So I'm not going to support this referral because it can only lead to more jumping on that bandwagon.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Eglai on referral.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of quick questions for the clerk's office. Can you tell council the status of Councillor Cloutier's very similar motion from FEDCO? Where does that sit?
Mr. Mayor, I'll ask you, the city treasurer or the city clerk, to add to my answer if required. But at this time, Councillor Cloutier's motion introduced at FEDCO was similarly referred to council's consideration during the 2022 draft budget review process, and that the city treasurer include an update on the matter as part of the budget transmittal report. So in short, Mr. Mayor, it was also referred.
Okay, thank you for that. That was my recollection, but I just wanted to confirm. And secondly, whether this motion is referred or not referred today, on the main piece, the committee recommendations, I'm assuming councillors have the freedom to vote on each particular direction and don't have to accept the directions in their totality?
Mr. Mayor, unless the city treasurer advises that they are in some way practically indivisible, yes, members of council have the ability to dissent on individual recommendations.
Okay, thank you. On that basis, I'll be supporting referral in a similar way that Councillor Cloutier's motion was referred for discussion during the budget process.
Thank you, Councillor. Next is Councillor Brockington, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just very briefly, I will support the referral, but the point I want to make is there's no plan for the OPH money that I would like to see at some point. So if the motion that we had says, let's take 9.2 million out of police and direct it to health, what I want to see is if there are services that the police are providing that will no longer happen, the money that gets directed to public health has to complement those services. It can't go into something completely irrelevant like, I don't know, restaurant food testers. It has to be directly related to what the police services are doing. And that's why I want to see a plan. If this gets referred and gets studied further and it gets incorporated in the 2022 budget, we need to see a plan how those monies by OPH will be spent. And it has to be for service that the police are already doing that complements that. That's what's missing for me. So I'm going to vote to refer that today, but I wanted to state what my expectations are going forward for how that money would be used if OPH gets more resources. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor El-Shandir, you'll have to come back to speak at the end because it's your motion. So we'll go to Councillor Luloff on referral, please.
Thank you very much. My question is to the chair of the Ottawa Board of Health, if you'll indulge me. If this item is not to be referred today, Is this amount part of OPH's budget ask for this year? Is this amount spoken for?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you saying that do we have a plan to spend the 9.2 million or however much it is? Is that the question?
That's correct, yes.
At this point, no, we haven't turned our minds specifically to that amount going forward. I'm glad you asked the question because it just gives me an opportunity to respond to something Councillor Brockington said as well. I'm sure he didn't mean irrelevant. He meant unrelated. I think he would agree that everything public health does is relevant to our community. Again, I support referral because I think Councillor Cloutier's motion, which has also been referred, gives us an opportunity to have that discussion about where that money should go. Should it go to public health or should it go to Tony DeMonte's team working on the community safety plan, all with the same intent of addressing the mental health responses and who can do that best and do we need to do it differently. But I think that's a bigger discussion that we can have as part of the budget process. I think both motions, frankly, help in that regard to getting to that point and having that discussion. I hope that helps.
It does very much. Thanks for your thoughtful response. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Luloff. Just to follow up on what Councillor Eglai said in his capacity as chair of the health board, and I've had meetings with he and Dr. Etches and Steve Kanalakis has been involved. First and foremost, our strategy with respect to increased funding of Ottawa Public Health has to be at the provincial level because we have been incurring significant costs during COVID-19, and they have a responsibility on the 70-30 model to support local health units. So I think the reason why I'm going to support referral is because we're, as Councillor Deans, I think, said, we're not at the stage where we have a draft budget at this point. So I think it's premature to start directing police, which of course legally we're not allowed to do. So on referral,
just a quick point of order, Mayor, just to the clerk, I guess, is the referral in order? We are speaking about budget directions. We're referring a budget direction motion to a non-budget direction entity.
We're sending it to the budget process.
Yes, what we're talking about now is budget directions for staff to go away and develop a budget. And they'll be doing that work outside of this motion. So we're referring it to a process that will be taking place after the budget directions have begun to be developed. I just want to make sure it's in order.
It is. I ruled that some time ago, so it is within.
Can I just hear from the clerk then as well that your motion to increase the police up to 3% in the budget directions is also makes sense to have it now and not be referred as well. If we're referring everything related to the police budget increase, why don't we refer that portion of this point number 2 under the FedCo directions for budget directions? Why don't we also refer that? I don't understand why that might go.
Councillor, you can vote against the staff recommendation on the budget guidelines if you'd like. Okay, so yes, anyone else on?
Sorry, Mayor, I've asked a question of the clerk.
Well, I've ruled on it. The clerk can give their opinion, but the ruling stands.
Great, I'll just hear the clerk's opinion.
Deputy Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, on the matter of the motion before you, the mayor has ruled that motion is in order. So the Office of the City Clerk has nothing to offer on this point.
Okay, anyone else on referral until we get to Councillor El-Shantiri to wrap up debate? Okay, Councillor El-Shantiri on wrap up on your referral motion, seconded by Councillor Deroux.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and colleague. This is not about defunding the police. This is just to send it back to the police board and have the police board among themselves with the service to make that decision and take those steps toward their budget. And obviously, as a city council under the Police Service Act, Section 4, we can only vote yes or no to the police budget. But I don't want to repeat what my colleague have said earlier. This is, keep in mind, 82% of the police budget, it is salary and benefit, and any cuts to the police budget, that means you're cutting human resources. So all what we're doing here, we send it back to the police board and let the police board as a separate identity to deal with it, and then we can debate that on the floor when the police budget be presented to us as a city council. So I hope I can get your support on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and I urge members of council to vote for referral. Some members of council gave a long list of priorities where new money should go to, yet public safety was not on that list. Yet it's one of the biggest issues I hear time and time again out in the community, the need for a good police presence, the need for the police department certainly to reform and to change the ways it does things. But I think taking literally millions of dollars out of the base budget obviously is not the way to go. And I think these kinds of motions that come forward should, as Councillor Cloutier wisely supported, referring his motion to the budget process when we can have a full discussion on the whole budget as opposed to one particular window. So on referral.
Yeas and nays.
Yeas and nays, please.
Yeas and nays installed. Yeas and nays on referral. So
Councillor Tierney.
Yes.
Councillor El Shantiri.
Yes.
Councillor Luloff.
Yes.
Councillor Menard.
No.
Councillor Gower.
Yes.
Councillor King.
No.
Councillor Dudas.
Yes.
Conseiller Cloutier. Councillor Giroux.
Yes.
Councillor McKenney.
No.
Councillor Suds.
Yes.
Councillor Moffat.
Yes.
Councillor Shirelli.
No.
Councillor Brockington.
Yes.
Councillor Eglai.
Yes.
Councillor Deans.
Yes.
Councillor Leeper.
No.
Councillor Kitts.
Yes.
Councillor Meehan.
Yes.
Councillor Hubley.
Yes.
Conseiller Fleury.
No.
Councillor Harder.
Yes.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
No.
Mayor Watson.
yes.
18 yeas, 7 nays.
Okay, we're now on
Sorry,
the.
Mr. Mayor, my apologies. 17 yeas and 7 nays.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We're now on item 1, proposed 2020 budget directions, timeline and consultation process. On debate or questions, Councillor Menard.
Thanks very much, Chair. I will comment on this. I think with regard to the potential for another increase to the police while our public health increase is much, much less, we need to be considering that every dollar, as Ottawa Public Health staff have said, who helped draft that motion, every dollar invested in mental health and addictions saves $30 in lost productivity and social costs. And we keep saying that we need to target the root causes around this table all the time. The police do not target root causes. And you need to take action to do that. It doesn't just happen. You can't just say we need to target root causes and not actually do the work. So, tax bills were sent out to Ottawa residents recently. And one of the most shocking things people were seeing was that those bills were showing that more was being spent on policing than public education. Can you imagine, is that the world we actually want to live in? That police budget is also more than triple the amount of Ottawa Public Health's? Think about what that means in our city. We need to be brave on these issues and start to tackle what has been piling up, the amount of information, the studies, the reports, the academics that have been speaking about this, and listen to what they're saying. And send a message. And these budget directions don't do that. I would also submit that terms like, acceptable taxation and fiscal discipline don't really say much. They're subjective in ideological terms, and the rhetoric should really have no place in an honest accounting of the city's finances and the setting of our priorities. And we're hearing a lot of rhetoric about that, about keeping taxes low, but then we don't hear about the things that are costing the most for Ottawa residents. And that is things like expanded urban boundaries or massive road widenings, which does not work. Subsidizing the financial interests of developers, through things like brownfield grants or very, very low development charges on single family homes on the periphery. Or the debt the city's taken on as a result of large public-private partnerships that lock us in for 30 years of operation payments and costly lawsuits that result. And so we're not talking about those issues the way we should be, but we do have a lot of rhetoric about keeping taxes low. None of those things help to do that. The rest of the directions on the transit fares, I have a quick question on transit fare increase. We're saying that ridership is low. Ridership was already in decline beforehand. So what are we doing in terms of a $5 million cost to, we're saying 2.5% increase is based on a ridership level of 82%. If staff can just comment on that. How are we getting to the 82% ridership figure?
Thanks, Councillor. It's an average over the year. So we're looking at what's happening with ridership at the beginning versus where we're going to end. So it's our projection and forecast for 2022.
Did our forecast from last year come to pass?
In terms of, I'm going to say the assumptions we put in the budget and the funding that we received from the SRA, those two aligned because we were able to balance the budget.
No, our ridership projections, did those come to pass?
Well, COVID got in the way of that, Councillor.
Okay, so they didn't. So what was our ridership last year?
I'm going to ask if Mr. Manconi is on the call, if he has a clear number for that. If not, then I'll loop back with you after and get that for you.
No, we don't have a clear number, but the variations that we reported at Transit Commission, we were at lows as low as 20% and even below that. I can say to you now, though, ridership is increasing very dramatically. Last week, we were over the 30% mark, which was the last peak, and it's climbing every day.
I'm glad to hear that. I think it will still be tough to get to 82%, and we're projecting a $5 million revenue from coming in from that. I don't know that that's realistic under these budget directions that have been drafted. I also wanted to ask about the federal gas tax funds. We haven't talked about those. I wrote an article several months ago about the benefits of increasing the federal gas tax funds for cities. The federal government did double the traditional allocation. So how are our staff consulting with city councillors on the doubling of the federal gas tax funds and where those may go?
Thanks, Councillor. That doubling was just approved actually through the approval of the federal budget. So we know that that is a given. It's a one-time doubling of those funds. So it's not into what I would call a regular year-over-year allocation. That piece we believe will come in, I think it's 2028. So when the feds announced that injection they were going to make in transit, there's some capital injections they're going to make or provide funds that we will have access to apply to. And that is largely around the e-bus piece that will happen over the next couple of years. We don't have any information in terms of what it's going to look like for 2028. It's too soon. What we're doing in the background right now is we're going through our review of the transportation plan, so the the affordability plan, and we're also reviewing the long-range financial plan. And what we're doing is putting that lens in terms of the use of the gas tax funds there, which has been council directed in the past. And then we'll come back to you to talk to you about what that's going to look like over the next while.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brockington, please.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to know if I can ask a question to the chair of the Ottawa Police Services Board. Is that possible?
She's willing to accept a question, certainly.
Thank you. Councillor Deans, can you confirm that your board will be proposing three types of budgets, a zero-based, a 1.5% increase, and a 3% increase?
No, I can't confirm that at this point. The board meeting is on Monday, and we'll be considering recommendations at that time, but there's still work happening to determine the budget direction, and the board has not at this point carried a budget direction.
So the board could say, chief and staff go ahead and up to 3%, or they could say, we would like to see 3 options, 0, 1.5, 3. That is possible.
I think the board has made it very clear to the service that we are looking to reduce our budget ask. The 3%, I'm viewing the 3% in this document today as an upset limit or an envelope. Do we intend to take it all? We're hoping not to make that request, but there is a lot of work to be done to put us in a position to do that. And I can't predetermine the outcome of the budget direction discussion that the board hasn't had yet.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. Also, yesterday I attended the Finance and Audit Committee meeting for the staff presentation. I heard the chief say a much more comprehensive, fulsome consultation process with the public. Are there any attempts to survey the general public where you get a representative sample of the people of Ottawa on their opinions on the police budget? Are there any attempts to do that?
Yeah, this is probably going to be the most comprehensive public engagement strategy that we have used in terms of building a budget. And I can't go into the specifics of all of the tools that will be used, but yes, there have been discussions about reaching the broader community and understanding the wants and needs of all of the community.
Thank you. I think it's critical to help not only your board, but this council understand from a representative sample of the people of Ottawa where they stand on some key finance issues of the budget. So thank you for what the board will be doing in the coming months. Just switching to transit to our city treasurer, the proposal here is to increase the transit levy by no more than 4.5%. What do the following years look like for the transit levy? We've had some issues with the provincial gas tax. There's a need to fill that void with the transit levy that's well above the rate of inflation. But what does it look like for years after as far as the transit levy goes?
Thank you, Councillor, for that question. This budget, so 2022, will be that last incremental of $5 million. As we move into 2023, I believe we're going to have to fill the gap of about 3.2. So it's one last step, and then we've dealt with that issue.
Okay. That's causing some concern in my community, the number 4.5, but it's important to have that context and to give folks the information that this is really trying to address a provincial funding source that has been eliminated. Finally, my last question to you, Madam Treasurer, is Part F of the motion, just the water rates. Can you confirm the water rates for 2022 in the urban core?
So we're going to have an increase of, it's an average of 4.86%, which is exactly the same as what happened in 2021.
Okay, and can you just comment again, similar to the transit levy, what do the next 0 to 5 years look like for the water rate?
That will depend, Councillor, in terms of the review that we're doing in the long-range financial plan. And that's happening, I want to say, into early 2022. So when we bring that back, you'll have more of a view as to whether those rates will stay the same. If we've got enough investment, perhaps they can fall, or if they will change. So you'll see that, I want to say, in the next probably 8 months or so.
Can you confirm that in addition to inflationary increases that the water rate covers, we are only putting the difference, so once the inflationary costs are covered, the difference in the water rate is only going towards critical, urgent infrastructure repair. Is that correct?
I would have to look at the list of capital. Some of it is critical and urgent. And then some of it, obviously, Councillor, would be covered through development charges, through growth.
Okay. Perhaps I can just ask that you and I meet offline, because I want to make sure that 4.86% is covering off those critical projects. Otherwise, that rate should not be as high as it is. But if we could talk offline, that would be great. Thank you, Mayor. That's it from me.
That's a good line of questioning. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McKenney, please.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I won't be supporting budget directions today. I haven't for most of the time that I've been in council, because I firmly believe that our direction to staff should be for them to come back and tell us what is required. What is required, for example, to ensure that we're meeting traffic calming needs. We heard that actually at Police Services Board at the Finance Committee yesterday, that when police went out and talked to all of us, the number one concern in all of our communities was traffic and speeding. And it's not enforcement. Enforcement is not what's going to slow people down. And I had that conversation with police as well. It's traffic calming. So what does staff need to give us the tools in all of our wards to calm traffic, to keep our residents safe? What do we need? What does public health need to address this ongoing opioid crisis? What does the housing department need to ensure that people don't continue to fall into homelessness? Because they are. We're spending money on one side of the equation and housing people, but we don't have the resources we need to stop people from falling into homelessness and being traumatized. Families, individuals traumatized by losing their homes. What do we need in transit to maybe make it more affordable for people on Ontario Works and ODSP, people who have no way of really affording even the community bus pass or the Equipass? Come and tell us what we need. Social services, our community funding, $25 million a year. We opened it up this year. We got $66 million of requests, $66 million. Those are agencies out there who are serving the needs of residents that we represent, coming to us and saying, we need more to do the job that we're doing, to operate day programs, to operate food banks, to do outreach into our communities for the absolute most vulnerable people in our communities. So that's what our budget direction should be. It should be, come back, tell us what you need to meet these requirements. So we'll tell you what the requirements are. You come back, tell us what you need, and then we'll have that conversation. I mean, that's what we're here for. We go out to our community then and say, look, this will mean X increase. And this is what you'll get for it. And are you okay with that? And then we make that decision. But what we do instead is we give this artificial cap. We get back, the basic that can be done with that. And it never changes. It has never changed since 2010, really. So, what we're proposing today is not going to make the changes in our community that people are asking us for. It is not going to fund our community and safety well-being plan. It is not going to fund better traffic calming. It is not going to stop people from falling into homelessness in the city. It is not going to help Ottawa Public Health to address an opioid crisis where we had over 300 opioid-related deaths last year. Over 300 families lost someone last year. And I don't understand why public health isn't saying, you know what, we need more than what you're asking us for. I hope to get back something better, but I cannot support a direction
1 minute
that says, this is your cap, you come back, whether you can meet the needs of your community or not. That's not what we're concerning ourselves with. What we're concerning ourselves with instead is controlling spending, not meeting the needs of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Meehan, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and good morning, everyone. Is it still morning? Yep. I'll try to be brief. I too will not be able to support budget directions today. On a similar vein as Councillor McKenney, I agree that putting forth a budget direction for a standard 3% increase across the board, I think does not meet the reality of people's lives here in Ottawa right now. And quite frankly, I was dismayed to see the 3% because someone who is out talking to people all the time, people are hurting. We've gone through a pandemic where a lot of people have lost their jobs or they've seen their income decrease. Not just residents who have been, footing 3% and tax increase for year after year. Not just 3%, but less than that the trend is increasingly going up. Once taxes go up, they never come down. But the reality is that people are suffering right now, and businesses too. I've talked to businesses whose rents have increased consistently over the pandemic, and they are struggling, and they're just holding on. Thank God that things are opening up. But, things can change on a dime as we have learned. But I think that just putting a blanket 3% increase does us all a disservice. I think that the services should come back, essential services, to tell us what they need. Perhaps they don't need that 3%. And that savings can go to things like what we're talking about, to public health and to tackle the opioid crisis. But right now, I think we have to go line by line, just simply asking for a 3% increase and a 4.5% increase for transit when we continue to run buses that are half full does not make any sense. I think we have to do some really tough work in this city to tighten our belts, to reflect reality. Yes, we have more services we have to fund, but there are certain things that we might have to let go in order to present a budget increase that's much less than 3% right now. So I can't support the budget directions today. I look forward to going through the budget line by line and looking for savings, because quite frankly, that's what our residents are doing right now. They look at us and say, you people have jobs. None of you have lost your jobs. And they don't think it's fair. And I, for one, would like to be a councillor who reflects the needs and the wants of the residents of this community. So that's where I stand on this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. We look forward to your ideas, Councillor. Councillor Eglai.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me start off by saying that I don't think it's necessarily helpful to frame this discussion about one agency versus another agency, about OPS versus OPH, or vice versa. I don't think that's helpful. They have different jobs, different roles within our community, very different funding models, as the mayor pointed out, in terms of the funding formula that's utilized with the province. And that's why I shout out again to my colleague, Councillor Cloutier. That's why I like the flow of the motion that he put forward. And I'm happy that we're going to be able to have that discussion in full, not just at FEDCO, but in full with all council members, because it's a discussion that we need to have. To me, this is really about how OPS is struggling to find its place in today's world, is trying to figure out how to pivot to where they should be, how they should be carrying out their job, and deciding what jobs they frankly shouldn't be doing. But just because they shouldn't be doing certain jobs, and I think there are certain jobs they shouldn't be doing, doesn't mean that public health is there to fill that gap. We have a community safety plan in the works, and Councillor Coutier's motion points directly to that, having that discussion. And I think that's the place to have it. We're all there. We have all the budget information in front of us. I will be dissenting on 3% this morning. I think I think police services needs a bucket of cold water thrown over their heads. They need that jolt. They need to know that people out there are very, very concerned about it. And I think that that goes towards it by saying we're not comfortable with the 3% increase. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that all that money should simply be transferred to one other agency. We have to have a fulsome discussion. Certainly public health is going to be part of the community, and is part of the Community Safety Action Plan discussions. We are having a significant report coming forward in September on the opioid issue in our community. Our staff are working on it now. They're working with stakeholders in the community. They're working with people with lived experience. And we're going to have a very fulsome discussion about OPH's role in that regard in our community in the fall and September. So again, I won't be supporting the 3% to the police. Again, I think they need a wake-up call. And I think we can help them, that alarm to ring for them by doing this. But again, I think that leads to a more fulsome discussion, a much larger discussion than, as my mother used to say, taking from Peter to pay Paul. We have to have that discussion. And I think this motion helps with that, or the motion that we just referred, as does Councillor Clucci. So I look forward to that discussion. And as for today's discussion, as I say, I will not be supporting the 3%, but the balance of the budget directions I'm fine with. It's the 3% I'll be dissenting on. Thank you.
So are you referring to the 3% on the police services line, Councillor?
Correct.
Okay.
I think it's, I'll find I think it's 2 sub A sub 2 of the recommendations.
Okay, Councillor Deans, please.
So just a couple of questions of clarification, and then I have some comments to make. But I just want to understand, if that line item fails, the 3% to police, is the default 0, or would there be a substitution of another number in there?
Yeah, Mr. White, could you give us, thinking the same thing, because it would not send a very clear message to the police how they put their budget together. Mr. White?
Mayor, the irrespective of what council decides, the board is still required under the Police Services Act to put forward estimates. Council's responsibility is to establish the timeline for the delivery of those and the format of those. The guidance that the board gets through the budget directions is just that, it's guidance. The board is still required to put forth its estimates for what it believes are necessary to maintain the police force, provide it with equipment and facilities, and to provide for the expenses of the board. And those are what are required to allow the board and the police service to meet its mandate under the Police Services Act to provide adequate and effective policing in the municipality.
Yeah, and I think just to follow up on that, the wording is important here to read on 2A small I. It says the Ottawa Police Service levy be increased by no more than 3%. So we're not giving them an automatic 3%. It's saying their cap is at 3%. It could come in less, but we won't support it coming in more. Councillor Deans.
Thank you. Just a question on transit funding. I'm wondering, maybe this is to the city manager. I'm wondering, or maybe Mr. Manconi, I'm wondering what conversations have been occurring between the city and the federal government about their return to work plan, and if they're going to be bringing back their employees on a 5-day-a-week basis. Because I do think that, the downtown and the transit service is heavily focused on federal government employees, and their plans for return to work will factor dramatically into how we should move forward with transit services in the city of Ottawa.
Mr. Mayor, yes, I host a meeting. We formalize a group with the federal government and city staff, including Mr. Manconi. We've been meeting regularly for the last year, and we have another meeting in the next week or so, where we're discussing what the return to work plans are for the federal government, and things have been evolving as the vaccination rates have been improving, and we moved to phase 3. Initially, most employers were looking at some kind of cap on the capacity of their buildings based on social distancing or physical distancing requirements. The facilities can only take so many people if you're to meet those requirements. But we believe that if vaccinations keep up at the rate we're going, and we are successful in phase 3, there's a very good likelihood, barring any fourth wave, there's a very good possibility that those physical distancing requirements will be reduced or eliminated, and as other protocols. So now we're in this place of reevaluating what would be the capacity of their buildings downtown. So I don't have a specific answer because they are still figuring it out for their 150,000 employees. They're leaving a lot of the decision-making to their deputy ministers of individual departments. It's a decentralized decision-making process for them because of their size. I'm hoping to get more clarity because this is next week, because this is an issue that we're very attached to. We met with the universities and colleges yesterday with Mr. Manconi, and they're planning to bring back a significant number of their students also. So that's encouraging in terms of UPass and what they're going to do with that. So we are in fulsome discussions with them, and we'll continue to do so over the summer before September starts.
Okay, because obviously we need some modeling on, especially the federal government return to work plans. I'm thinking that reliable revenue sources that transit has had in the past may be a thing of the past. Because if the federal government is doing some sort of hybrid return to work model where they're only requiring employees either to completely work from home or return to work on a part-time basis or to the place of employment on a part-time basis, monthly passes may be a thing of the past in large measure. So I think there's a lot of work to be done on that file before we make any decisions about the future of transit. But I agree with one of my colleagues who earlier said in the conversation, I can't imagine us getting back to an 82% transit ridership, and neither can I in the foreseeable future, given the situation we're in right now. And I really think that we need to consider matching the service to the demand for service, especially the commuter service to the urban core, because I just don't think the ridership is going to be there over the next year. Just generally, on the police services levy increase, the board will not take that as a given that's a 3% increase. We see that as an envelope. We are hopeful that we're not going to be asking for that. We know there's a lot of work to be done. To Councillor Brockington's point, we certainly know that there's consultation. We need to understand the public mindset when it comes to policing. I, as chair of this board, believe that we need to modernize policing. We need to recognize that policing is largely downstream, it's largely reactive, and that we need to have more proactive ways of dealing with policing so that we don't get to the point where police have to respond in the way that they respond today. That's a lot of work to be done. You'll recall that I put a motion to council asking that this city take over the mental health strategy, and that work is happening now. There is a lot of work to be done in order to transition to a more modern policing service. And it's not waving a magic wand or just simply saying, do this. There's employees, there's contracts, there's mandates from the province, and we need to do it thoughtfully in a thoughtful manner. And that's really what the Police Services Board is attempting to do. So we hear the voices of those that want to see more money upstream. I tend to agree with them. It's just getting there that's the challenge. And we are working through those. In terms of the overall budget direction, I said this at FedCo, I'm just going to say it again. I find this approach lazy. I don't think that every single service, especially post-pandemic, require the same amount of money. And I think that just an across the board general approach of around 3% it is a bit lazy. It's not considering how some services, our own strategic priorities should have focus of money. We're doing a lot of work at the Police Services Board to try and reduce our demand. I think across the board, we should be doing that. I think we should be setting a lesser number across the board and then asking each
30 seconds.
Each service across the corporation to justify any request that they have for additional funds. And I maybe just one quick question to Wendy. What is the percentage contracts that employment contracts? Is it like a 2% across the board that our employees are getting? What is that number?
It's generally 2%, Councillor. And I wonder if I might take an opportunity to address your comment with respect to the application of the increase, because I think this is an important point. And I think Mr. Kanalakis spoke to this as well when we discussed this at FEDCO. And that's where we don't take 3% and automatically roll out 3% across all areas in the city. We look to align the budget with the strategic priorities that are approved through the term of council, strategic priorities, and align our funding and our increases and our pressures with those. So I think that's very important context in terms of what we're doing in the background, because it's not, as I said, it's not a simple rollout of that 3% to all.
Yeah, it's certainly.
Wrap up, Councillor, because you're over your time now. You just wrap up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It does come across sounding pretty much like 3% across the board. And I actually think we should have like a budget challenge committee that we've had in the past that would actually drill down on some of these numbers and figure out how we can put the money where it's most needed, especially post-pandemic, and what we've learned from that. And it is for that reason that I'm not inclined to support the overall budget direction, because I would rather see a lower number and then a budget challenge and a request for funds to align to our strategic priorities. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Conseil Fleury.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I want to echo many of the comments from colleagues. If there's 1 year to really do a deep dive and reprioritize based on council's priorities, which a number of us have named here, that'd be putting a mental health team response, that'd be looking at transit investments, looking at some of our infrastructure investment, housing investments. Those priorities are clear, but more than ever, coming out of the pandemic, I think we need to, being at the stages we're in the pandemic, I think we need to take this opportunity and not just build on to the more traditional approaches that we've done over the previous terms of council. I think there's a unique window. And when you look at various city services, public health going from 300 employees to 3,500 employees, the importance of bylaw, who continues to step up to the challenge, whatever happens in our city, from fireworks to vaccination clinics to so on. Seeing the work we've done with our patio operators to waive some of the patio fees. I don't think we can go back. I think we've gone somewhere that we have to look at what is the city of the future and what are the services that residents expect over the coming years. So I'm really, really concerned that we just continue to redo the same thing. I remember when Steve Kay was hired as city manager, he came in and set out the game plan of what aligned with council priorities and where we needed to go. I think more than ever, there's a window of time to do that. There's a window of time to look at, okay, how do we build back better? What are out of our priorities? What do we really are pushing forward on over the last remaining legs of this term? And how do we set up future councils to be successful? I think we're all in the same boat. We want each individually, our communities to be successful. We want the city to be as well. So, moi, je trouve que malheureusement, on semble faire le même.
I do believe that we're still using some traditional models instead of innovating. So we have a very big budget of a couple of $1 billion. We have about 1,400 employees. So when we had a realignment at one point, we saw the same thing in 2017. I think over the next year, we have to look at every initiatives and reestablish our own priorities. For me, it's very difficult to approve the general orientations because we haven't thought about building a better future. What have we learned with the pandemic? How can we do better as an institution? What can we let go? What can we renegotiate? So I think that with the model that we have right now, I would continue to participate. I would invite my constituent to participate in the consultations. But what we have to do is ask ourselves, what are our priorities for the rest of our mandate? Thank you so much.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Moffat is next.
Thank you very much. Just want to jump in on some comments and stuff. And I know some people probably generally hate my history tidbits and stuff here, but I think, we need to remember, where we came from. You go back to 2008, 2009, 2010, we saw the 3 highest tax increases in successive years in the city of Ottawa's history. That's where the idea for capping it came from. Over those course of those same 3 years, like the taxes were 3.7%, 4.7%, 4.9%. Over the course of those 3 years, we also saw increases of 9% annually, around 9% annually to the Ottawa Police Services budget. In fact, when many of us got elected in 2010, we came in and heard a presentation from the chief at the time about the money they weren't going to spend because we weren't letting them increase it to 9%. It was literally a presentation about how we would have spent 7% of the increase that you're not giving us. There are some realities with policing, and I think we owe it to the Police Services Board and the chief, and I know Deputy Chief Bell is working on this quite diligently, I know with Chair Deans, on trying to address some of the concerns we're hearing. But keep in mind too that Ottawa has one of the lowest per capita spending of any police services in this country. But we aren't alone in this situation. I mean, there's some odd comparison between health and police services today, and across Ontario, over $5 billion is spent annually on policing. Over $60 billion is spent on healthcare. That's not an apples to apples comparison, and it's not purposeful here. There are many municipalities who are actually going to suffer because of policing. So the issue does actually have to be addressed at some point. We have municipalities very near us where property taxes actually equate for double what they do in Ottawa just to pay for policing alone. It's an issue, and it's something that Ontario likely needs to address at some point to manage police costs in the future. Otherwise, municipalities will be bankrupted by the OPP. We're fortunate we have our own service, but there are some challenges, there's no question. And I think we owe it to the Police Services Board and the chief to work through this. This isn't going to happen overnight. I hazard a guess it might take 10 years plus to be able to actually address what we're asking of police services to be, addressing concerns in this city. And it's tough. I mean, most of you know what's the concern we hear mostly from residents. They want to see more police, right or wrong. It's the ask that we get. And that's going to be a constant balance, especially politically, as we advance this. But I don't think anyone around this table disagrees that there needs to be some sort of change in how we operate at Police Services Board and the police service in general. But like I said, it is going to take time, and I think we need to be patient, and we can't expect it all to happen at once. I have a lot of faith in the Police Services Board and the chief, as well as the deputy chief, to work toward this, and not just this year, but for the years to come. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the budget direction, one of the concerns I saw was that we said up to 3% for the police budget, but for public health, we said we have a lower figure. And that concerns me when the priorities of prevention are absolutely through public health. And I appreciate that Chair has spoken from public health. And this isn't about a Hunger Games, but it is about priorities. We learned a lot through the pandemic. We learned the importance of public health more than ever before. I don't think we'd be having as strong a conversation if it wasn't for the pandemic. And we realized their value. And now there's an aftermath, and that's the opioid crisis. So funding will be needed for that. And that is my concern. This is a very big project that needs to be tackled at the local level. We want all levels of government involved. We want that funding from all levels of government, but we need to lead the way to show that we really care about this issue. And so that's my concern. We worked very closely with Ottawa Public Health. As you know, we used city employees, but in the end, they need to be strong. They're exhausted, and we need to give them extra help. We need to look at what just happened in this pandemic and realize what are the core values that we as a city need to tackle. And it's something that is beyond just public health. Affordable housing is obviously a major part of that as well. And we've got to work together on that. And those are the things that we have to keep in mind. I think we all admit that we learned a lot, and it's a different game now. I appreciate the funding for transit. That's important. We have to keep it strong. I appreciate we did not make major cuts in transit, and we need to keep it strong. It's going to have to remain strong. We're building an entire system that we want people to use. This is going to be our pride and joy. So that is very important for the transit. So that needs to continue. But I think the eye that we have to have is preventative. How do we get people to be not needing police, not getting in trouble? We need economic help everywhere. And as I said, we can't do it alone as a city, but we can certainly be leaders in certain aspects of it and bring in our federal partners who should be right beside us on these things, as well as the province, of course. So I think that's the important part. So I would recommend that we look a little closer at the public health and also just ask ourselves on every single item, is this preventative measure? Is this going to make us a better population? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of questions for Ms. Stevenson, please. First, on the citywide portion of the tax bill, we're proposing a 3% increase. On the citywide portion, how much revenue is that expected to bring in?
Approximately 42 million.
42 million. So I just want to ask, it's been a couple of years since we last spoke about this in depth. My understanding of how we're approaching the budget in this term of council is that in the previous term of council, we were committed to raising taxes by just 2% per annum. In this term of council, the mayor led with a campaign promise that I think was supported by most of us to top up, if you will, the amount of revenue that we're bringing in order to address a certain portion directly as a levy to catching up on our infrastructure deficit. I assume that has been what we have been doing, where 1/3 of the increased revenue on the citywide portion that we're bringing in has gone to infrastructure catch-up.
That's correct, Councillor. Approximately $10 million per year, and I believe since 2019.
Okay, so the approach for 2022 would, I assume, be the same. 1/3 of the increased revenue on the citywide portion of the tax bill would be dedicated to infrastructure catch-up?
We're going to continue with that plan next year, yes.
Okay, so of the additional $42 million that a 3% citywide increase will bring in, 2/3 of that will be available to increase spending on the rest of the operational side of the budget.
The increase will be seen on the capital side, Councillor, so that 10 million will be reflected there.
Sorry, with respect to what is not being spent on that infrastructure catch-up, the $42 million increase, 2/3 of that would actually be available to address increased costs at the city.
Correct.
Yep. So I just took a quick look. The consumer price index 12-month May to May is 3.6% increase over the 1 year. Now, I think we were previously constraining our increases to 2% because that was at least roughly aligned with what consumer price increases are. Does a 2% increase in the amount of revenue that we're bringing in to provide city services, do we run a risk that we are not bringing in enough money to actually keep up with the increase in expenditures?
Thanks, Councillor, for that question. And I know we've had a lot of dialogue in the past on this one. I think the important point there is there's two pieces to that. So first of all, there's no municipal inflation, right, that we can, I'm going to say, clearly or magically measure on that. And the other piece is the construction inflation. So what we're doing, and you see in the report that you have before you today, is construction inflation will be applied at 3.7%, right, to the capital envelope of the budget. And then typically on the municipal side, when we look at inflation, so whether it's wages or contracts or things like that, they fit within that envelope. So it's not necessarily measured against that CPI that you see.
No, and I think that that's a critical point to make, is that the city's expenses don't rise by the same amount. So by the time we have put even more of the increased revenue towards increased construction costs, for example, on the capital side, that means there's potentially even less than 2% increase in revenue available to deal with the increase in operational expenses.
It depends as we go from service to service, Councillor, as to what those things are going to look like. So some may be less, some may have no increases. It really depends. Like I can't provide a flat comment to say yes or no on that.
I am concerned that as we see the increase in costs on supplies, construction, fleet, the inflation that we're seeing in Ontario and in Canada is outpacing the growth in revenue that we're bringing into the city when we're allocating 1/3 of the increase that we're bringing in of tax revenues directly to infrastructure catch-up. And for that reason, I have to ask colleagues again, and I know I made this point at FEDCO, to pay careful attention to what Councillor McKenney said, which is that a budget that is being proposed needs to reflect what the departments actually need. And when we are only bringing in a 2% tax increase that will be devoted to providing the services that residents expect us to provide, we're on the edge, given what inflation is doing right now. It's a concern, and for that reason, I can't support a budget direction that brings in just a 2% increase for the big bulk of expenses that the city has. I did want to ask one question out of curiosity, Ms. Stevenson. The new assessment growth is calculated at 1.4% this year. I think that's an increase from what historically we've been counting on as 1.3%.
Actually, it's a little bit of a change from last year. So in the 2021 budget directions, we had forecasted an assessment increase of 1.5.
Okay.
When we reported back through a tax policy report last April, it actually came in at 1.29%, so came in a little bit lower. And based on our projections, we believe that it will fall around 1.4% this year.
Okay. For the past, call it 5 years, what have the trends been with respect to what have the trends been with respect to that new assessment growth? Is it climbing or is it falling?
It has traditionally climbed, and what we saw last year is the fact that commercial assessment dropped off a little bit. So we didn't get as much as a commercial assessment added to the roll, which impacts it. So when you look at the amount of taxes that non-res brings in, it's typically more. So that's really the difference that you're seeing here.
Can you give an absolute value to that number?
No, I don't have that.
Okay. No, I'll follow up with you on that. Wonderful. Chair, thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Councillor El-Shantiri, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. I mean, we're having this debate, and I feel like as a member of the Ottawa Public Health Board, I feel like we're putting one group against the other, or one funding from the other. First of all, I think my colleague Scott Moffat said it best. It's going to take some time to turn that ship. But let me tell you, most of the saving we started at the Police Service Board is credit to the City of Ottawa Treasurer and their team, helping the police service to do the back office cost saving, whether we did the payroll, whether the back office support, or whether fleet. It's all been happening, and we need to encourage that. This is just a direction. If the police board choose to go with 2% or 1%, my recommendation will be the rest of that money should go to the community safety plan and well-being, because the 6 corner talk about in the community safety plan is mental well-being, racism and discrimination, housing, poverty reduction, violence against women, an integrated system. Like, this is what we're all saying. We're saying the same thing. And this could help the police and help all other agencies in the city to achieve their goal and find the saving. Is it going to take some time? Yes, it will take some time. But I mean, at least we have a plan ahead of us. Mr. Mayor, I sit on a working group with the ministry through AMO, and I have to tell you, the City of Ottawa Community Safety Plan is online, I hope, and is one of the best in the province. We only have another 2 municipalities who have equivalent to Ottawa, is the Peel region and the City of Toronto, which is still Ottawa shine as a #1 in the community safety plan and well-being. Unfortunately, we haven't got a chance to receive it at the CPS committee yet, and to talk about it and have discussion about the funding. But I think we should hold back. Like, I mean, you know, someone wants to give it here, somebody wants to take it from here. I mean, we all know Ottawa Public Health did a great job, right? It's not just on Ottawa, right across the province. You know, the public health did a great job because of the pandemic, and we don't want to take away from them. But it doesn't mean we should steal from someone to give someone else, or make it sound like, oh, if you don't do this, that means you don't support the other. No, we want to support both, because they both deliver great service with a different uniform, basically. So I hope we'll just vote for that direction. Work with I met with the Deputy Chief Bell 3 times, and some of the board members, just to talk about the budget. And I hope you do the same. And let's talk about this, and how could we help them to find saving. But I have to tell you, Mr. Mayor, there's not one day I go in my community, people don't ask me for more police because of traffic and speed on our road. And I know it's not just all police, but yet they want to see the police present. Having a sign say slow down on Upper Dwyer Hill is not helping me a lot, Mr. Mayor. And I have all those signs all over the place. What help to reduce that accidents on those highways? And you know, accidents in the rural area, the majority of the time fatal. So we need more police present. And I find it ironically, and this has been historically in the past 20 years, the most wards receive policing, they're the one who want to cut police budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on the item? Well, I just want to take this opportunity to remind members of council that our 3% tax cap is a very important goal. The focus today seems to be entirely on how much we should be spending, and I have heard zero consideration for how much residents are able to pay. Not everyone in our city has owned a house for 25 or 30 years or has the privilege of being mortgage-free. Council's single most important tool for helping persons and families contain their costs and keep more money in their pocket is the rate of municipal taxation. And I believe Council has acted prudently over the years to try to contain costs for our municipal taxpayers. Nous avons agi avec prudence pour tenter.
We acted prudently over the past to limit the cost for the ratepayers.
Guaranteed government paycheck coming into their bank account every 2 weeks. Tens of thousands of seniors are on fixed incomes and still live in their homes. First-time home buyers, many of whom are recent or not so recent newcomers to our country and city, struggle for years to save enough money to realize their dream of home ownership. And tens of thousands more who work in service, hospitality, or transportation struggle with their mortgage or rent payments. I believe we have a duty to make life in our city as affordable as we can while still investing in our key services and infrastructure. Now, tens of thousands of our residents are still unemployed and will need our support as we work together to build back from the pandemic. Yesterday, I was proud to read in The Citizen that our city has started to bounce back from the pandemic, and we're doing so with flying colors. Stats Canada says that our city lost 58,400 jobs during the pandemic, but on the upside, Stats Canada also says that the number of jobs in our region is now higher than before the pandemic. As I start to get out to every region of our city, rural, suburban, core, I'm excited to see the small businesses, restaurants, and other amenities starting to reopen. But when you delve more deeply into the numbers, tens of thousands of Ottawa residents are still suffering the negative effects of the pandemic. Most negatively affected, of course, are the sectors that rely heavily on in-person activities. Now, think about this for a minute. There are 26,500 fewer jobs in Ottawa's hotels and restaurants, a drop of 24%. The number of jobs in retail dropped from 72,000 to 62,000, a 10% drop. Many of these employees are racialized or new Canadians. And the transportation sector, which includes railways and airlines, lost 34% of its jobs. I hope members of council recognize that this has created financial uncertainty for tens of thousands of families and residents in our city. So now is the time not to start jacking up municipal taxes more than we need to. Now is the time to show Ottawa residents that we can live within our means of a tax increase which is basically allows the city to cover inflationary costs while investing 1% in aging and crumbling municipal infrastructure. And I want to remind members of council that before I was elected in 2010, transit fares had increased by 7.5% each of the previous years. That's 22% increase in transit over a 36-month period. And property taxes had also increased by over 15% over 3 years, a clearly unsustainable level of increase for Ottawa residents. For those who say they want to vote against the direction, the whole purpose is that we as the elected officials have to give direction to our staff. Otherwise, if the direction is defeated, where do the staff go? Do they just simply bring back whatever anyone wants and we see a 7, 8, 9% tax increase? That's clearly not responsible fiscally or otherwise. So in closing, I know that members of the public and council recognize that the Government of Canada and the Province of Ontario increased their spending quite dramatically to help us get through the pandemic. This included very significant spending on social services and income supports. And eventually, of course, these record levels of spending will have to come down because they're not sustainable. À terme, ces niveaux records de dépenses devront baisser. And it's important for members of council to remember that cities are not allowed to run deficits and that their primary source of revenue comes from property taxation. And so I ask all members of council to give staff the mandate and the direction to come back with a budget that meets our 3% tax cap, which is a reasonable level for our residents while protecting our core services, our core labor relationships, and our ongoing infrastructure and transit investment commitments. So we have the proposal before us. Yeas and nays.
Councillor Tierney?
Yes.
Councillor El-Shantiri?
Yes.
Councillor Luloff?
Yes, with dissent on section 2A, subsection II.
Councillor Menard?
Nay.
Councillor Gower?
Yes.
Councillor King?
No.
Councillor Dudas?
Yes.
Conseil Cloutier?
Oui.
Councillor Derouse?
Yes.
Councillor McKenney?
No.
Councillor Suds?
Yes.
Councillor Moffat?
Yes.
Councillor Shirelli?
Yes.
Councillor Brockington.
Yes, but dissent on 2A double I, 2A triple I.
Councillor Eglai.
Yes, but with a dissent on 2A double I, which is the police services levy.
Councillor Deans.
No.
Councillor Leeper.
No.
Councillor Kitts.
Yes.
Councillor Meehan.
No.
Councillor Hubley.
Yes.
Councillor Fleury.
No.
Councillor Harder.
Yes.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
No.
Mayor Watson.
Yes.
16 yeas, 8 nays, with Councillor Luloff dissenting on 2A sub 2, Councillor Brockington on 2A sub 2 and 3, and Councillor Eglai on 2A sub 2.
Okay, next item that was held was item 2, independent reports on LRT stage 2 lessons learned. Councillor Menard, you held this.
Thanks very much, Mayor. I just have a quick question. I asked most of my questions at a committee on this at FEDCO, but there's one that I wanted to come back with, and that is around the procurement methodology in the future. One of the recommendations is for a review of different procurement models. And I just wanted to hear from, because it says city staff may choose to do this. I just want to ask city staff, when might that happen? And what would that look like if we are going to be looking at the different ways we currently procure based on this report and the very important findings that have been found?
Mr. Mayor, so subject to council's approval of the reports and the recommendations, council staff will be doing two things. One, we'll be updating our P3 policy and related procedures to incorporate the recommendations, as well as part of the development of the stage 3 procurement strategy. We'd be considering the various procurement methodologies that have been proposed and bringing forward recommendations for council's approval in accordance with that P3 policy.
Thank you. And when is the P3 policy looking to be updated, just in terms of timelines and consultation with members of council and the public?
Mr. Mayor, we would begin those updates immediately, and the intention would be to advise council of the updates in Q2 of 2022 in line with Supply's normal reporting frequency.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Councillor Fleury, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. Puis moi aussi, je remercie les questions qui ont été
I too would like to thank for the answers that were provided. I'd like to come back on the recommendation 4 and 5, and I have a question for the city team. The recommendation 4 is talking about updates to council regarding delegated authority, and this is more in a generic way. It's not such an amount, such an organization, but to follow up on recommendation 5, it talks about a follow-up with elected representatives at the council table or at the committee table regarding the issues designated in that period. And I have a question on the word issues, because yes, we want to be updated on the procurement issues and major works. That's fine. But we also want to be updated on general issues. When you assign delegated authority, we expect to have regular updates, no matter what the current situation is. Or sometimes there are incidents that require a complete overhaul, but we want to be updates on the work council needs to be updated not only on the construction projects, but also on the processes put in place for the contract. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I'm not too sure of the question. Could the councillor repeat it in English?
Recommendations 4 really speak to the use of delegation of authority and project updates, which is fine. I mean, the issue that I think most council members would agree is that when you see a report with use of delegation of authority, it says company, amount, and kind of the time. Those are sort of generic and sort of hard to follow in the context of such large contracts. And I'm not sure how effective they are. When I go to recommendation 5, it speaks to the reporting lines. And I think what councils want is, well, at least what I want, is to get regular updates from where we're at when we launch a project to construction. And I think those making reference in recommendation 5 to only escalation of issues or update relating to issues, it assumes that we never get reports or updates relating to just status of the procurement or even status of the project itself. So I'm looking for clarity on, I don't know if it fits best in recommendation 4 or 5, but I think you understand the substance of what I'm asking.
So, Mr. Mayor, what's important and what's outlined in the recommendations from KPMG is that what's required to be reported and in the frequency is established upfront in the pre-procurement phases. Because once the procurement has been initiated, it's not possible to make those changes. But in bringing forward those recommendations and in determining what the reporting frequency should be, we need to be mindful of the recommendations of Justice Bellamy and Justice Morocco regarding the role of council. And so it'll be a balance of those elements, which would be established upfront as part of the approval of the procurement strategy.
I like the word upfront. I think if we're clear on it, we can absolutely have clear expectation. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. And that concludes my question, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. On the report, carried.
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 Next is Councillor Fleury as we hold item 3 Lansdowne Park. Councillor Fleury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to thank staff for the work, specifically Mr. Willis and team, and giving members of the sponsors group detailed discussions, detailed explanation of where we're at with specifically the agreement, but more specifically the issues that that we're faced with regarding to the north side of the stadium and the arena. Mr. Willis, I want to thank you for your correspondence relating to a motion dating back a number of years ago. I believe it dates back it's a motion titled 9241, and it was Councillor Hume and Councillor Jellett. And the substance of the motion really speaks to the entire agreement with OSEG. I'll read one sentence, which I think refers to the majority of it. At the end of the lease, all parts of Lansdowne Park, the open space, the stadium, and the commercial components are owned by the City of Ottawa. And I refer back to a recent article by Joanne Chianello, specifically on the stadium and the arena. When you think of larger big cities, I looked at Calgary recently with the Saddle Dome issues. There's big public policy discussions regarding mass fields and participation. I'm absolutely interested in seeing a successful Lansdowne Park, and I think the city has an important role to play. But I do want to understand in your next steps, will you be doing some evaluations regarding a wide range of models for a rebuild of an arena or the north side in terms of city ownership, or perhaps not, or perhaps a hybrid model? Like, I don't know how that could work, but are you intending to look at the financing components for the stadium and the north side specifically?
Mr. Mayor, just to be perfectly clear, staff have no mandate to look at a different model of ownership than what exists today, because council has taken a definitive position on this issue in the past, and the November 2020 report was perfectly clear that we're looking at making the current partnership with the LPP sustainable over the remainder of the partnership in its current form, and that goes to 2054. So staff have no mandate to review different models. We just have to look at a replacement of the capital facilities and financing options for that within the auspices of the partnership.
Okay, I understand the policy environment. Are you able, in your reporting back, though, in the reviewed approach, to separate the sport venues from the other elements so that we understand the financial implications or the financial analysis specifically for the stadium and arena components?
Mr. Mayor, I think it was always our intent to define the stadium and the arena components and then the public realm components separately. And I think there's even direction from the FEDCO meeting, which is that we're to segregate within the report the two areas so that it's perfectly clear and not intertwine them. Even though the success of the site and getting the people on the site means that we need to address both sides, we were directed at FEDCO, I believe, to make sure the report covers the two areas separately.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Willis, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that responds to my concerns relating to reporting of strategy specific for the north side in the arena, because we do want a successful Lansdowne and successful agreement, and ultimately, I know fans do enjoy the number of amenities that are there from concerts to sport venues, and we want that to continue, but it's important that the financing components of that remain transparent.
Merci. Councillor Menard, please.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you, staff, for the report and for the work throughout with myself and my community in working in collaboration to see where we are today. I do have a number of questions and some comments. I guess the first question would really be that it appears we're working closely with OSEG and with city staff in the development of a plan for the next redevelopment of Lansdowne. That makes sense to some extent, but there's also some important mitigation that needs to come into place. And so will OSEG partners be allowed to bid on any of the work that may come out of the planning process? For example, the reconstruction of the North Side Stands and Civic Center. And if so, how will procurement staff ensure that there's a fair, competitive bidding process?
So, Mr. Mayor, in the staff report, we believe we were clear that the rebuilding of the sports facilities would be a tendered process. So I don't believe that the partners in OSEG are necessarily in that business, but we'll certainly, I think that if they do bid, we will address, I'll work with Mr. McDonald to address safeguards on the management of information, fairness in the process. And Mr. McDonald's there to assist us on that.
And is that also the case for any potential buildings above the North Side Stands?
So, Mr. Mayor, as we indicated to FEDCO, that the OSEG currently has the leasehold area across the entire site, except the public realm components, which is the park, Aberdeen, and horticulture building. So we do have to work with them regardless, and so they would have an opportunity. As I indicated at FEDCO, we would